What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the PFF NFL show here on Media Row for Super Bowl week. I'm joined by Tracy Sandler, who is the 49ers reporter for Fangirl Sports Network. And we're going to talk a little San Francisco 49ers. But, not the Super Bowl because, unfortunately, they're not in it this year.
They are not.
But we're going to try to get them back there, Tracy. We're going to go through their offseason, talk about some needs, some free agents coming up, and then some draft prospects that they could be interested in with a little 3-round Niners mock draft. But first of all, how you doing?
I am good. Thank you for having me. It's a very different experience from last year when I was covering a team in the Super Bowl. It's a little more chill, a little more relaxed, but I'm good.
Yeah, the stakes aren't as high with every, I feel like, interview that you have to do
100%.
because, so you have to be on your P's and Q's very much when your team is actually in the event and you are covering it. But it's so great to be with you. I've followed all your work on social media for so many years. You've been going back and forth all the time. And so getting to meet you in person is not only fantastic, but also getting to kind of pick your brain on the 49ers season. So it didn't go exactly the way they wanted. They're not back here in this game. There's some things that went into that, some injuries, some bad luck that obviously went into it. But amidst that, it did still feel like some needs got exposed where it's like, all right, we really got to hit this offseason to make sure that we can continue to keep our winning window open. So talk to me about where the team is, sort of the areas where you felt like they fell short and why the season was a little bit of a disappointment there. And then we'll get into some pending free agents and some options that they could have to get better.
Part of it, I think, is playing 60 games in 3 years takes its toll.
Yes.
Especially when you don't win that final game and you don't win the Super Bowl. And I think this 49ers team was really built to win the Super Bowl in 21, 22, 23. They didn't. So this season, things broke down, literally and figuratively. That's, I think, part of why we saw so many injuries. There was also a lot of kind of drama heading into the season. There was the Brandon Ayuk contract stuff. The Trent Williams had a holdout. And so the vibes were kind of off from the get-go, from training camp. And so it wasn't super surprising that things went the way they did. But on the injury front, I think they just started to break down. Now, we've seen other teams with more depth get over these injuries, but it does catch up to you. We see the Lions, who were so dominant, they're out, their first playoff game. So I think that is a big part of it. Needs did get exposed. They're certainly not a rebuild, but they're in a retool. And I think the team is going to look very different next year, and especially in the trenches. But that, to me, is a big reason of why things happened the way they did. And now they have to figure out how to fix it. They also made some changes at coordinator. I mean, things just were kind of a mess. I mean, for lack of a better term. And to Kyle Shanahan's credit, he's pretty open and transparent with us. And he told us a little later in the season, he said, I knew in training camp we didn't have it. I just thought we were going to get it, but then all the injuries started. He said, I thought we would have gotten it sooner, but I knew in training camp we weren't there. And I think that says a lot.
Yeah. No, it's true. And I love when coaches are open in that regard, because these are some of the best football minds in the world. And, I think they know their team better than anybody else. And so it's interesting to hear him say that. So going into this offseason, we'll talk about Brock Purdy in a second, because I know that's going to, that plays a big part in not just next year, but also, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years from now. So we'll get into that in a second. But pending free agents that are coming up, guys that are upcoming unrestricted free agents. And let's kind of talk about, do we think they're going to be back? Do we not think they're going to be back? You don't need to give like a percentage, just maybe what you're leaning one way or another as we're about a month away from free agency opening up.
So I guess I'll start with Charvarius Ward. I would say most likely he's not going to be back. I think it's going to be too expensive. He had some personal tragedy that happened, and I know it would be hard for him to come back, but I think they knew that, which is why they signed Deommodore Lenoir long-term, mid-season. So I would say the chances of him being back are slim, which is too bad. Great locker room guy, fantastic player, but my feeling is that they will probably move on. Talanoa Hufanga becomes a very interesting one. Someone they were very high on in his first couple of years, who's played very well when he's played. Yeah. But he's coming off a couple of injuries. He barely played the season. It becomes an interesting conversation. That being said, I do believe they need him. They are not loaded at safety by any means. Jair Brown kind of took a little bit of a step back. It doesn't mean he won't take another step forward. But I think that one is one that they would really like to bring back. And
the defense is, I don't want to say night and day different, but very clearly a better defense when he is out there.
Very different. So I would say very good chance of Talanoa being back. Then we have you had your list there.
Aaron Banks,
Aaron
right?
Banks.
That's another one. I know off the top of my head.
So Aaron Banks is another one who I do believe he'll be back. He's played pretty well for them. They were, it's funny. He did not play at all his first year, and everybody was like, "It's a draft bust," and whatever. But really, it was just
Patience. Imagine.
It's shocking that they don't do that, and especially not on the.
No, I understand. Fans, when a guy doesn't play well, and obviously you're not like winning the Super Bowls, it happens.
But they were rolling, and Kyle Shanahan said at the time, like, we were rolling with what we had, so we just weren't going to throw him in there. He has played well for them, and so I do think he'll be back. But offensive line is a place where they have tremendous needs, but I can't imagine they want to start from scratch, and he's been there a while. So I think Aaron Banks is the one that you should expect back.
Okay.
Last but not, Drake Greenlaw. Okay, well, we saved the not best for last, but Drake Greenlaw. Talk about the defense being different with or without Drake Greenlaw. Yeah. It's been tremendously different. What I think comes into play here again is injuries, and I hate the narrative that guys are injury prone because it's football. And so,
right.
And I think, but I do think what happens is people compensate for different parts. They would love to have Drake Greenlaw back. He's the heart and soul of that defense in a lot of ways. I would akin him to not having Christian McCaffrey on the offense, but what would he be willing to sign for? What can they get him for? Knowing that he's dealt with a lot of injury. He came back from the Achilles injury. He only played a half.
One of the most gut-wrenching injuries that I've watched. I mean, he was literally, he got hurt because he was so excited to go on the field. And like, it's just,
it totally changed the Super Bowl. I do believe with Drake Greenlaw in that second half, they win the Super Bowl. So I think they will do everything in their power to get Drake Greenlaw back. And I do believe they need him, but this is the NFL. And pretty much everyone is replaceable, as awful as that is to say. So I think it's just going to come down to what is he willing to take and compromise on because of the health stuff.
So, all right. So kind of going for that, we think Aaron Banks, more likely than not, he'll be back. Talanoa Hufanga, more than likely than not, he will be back. Travis Ward, we think that he's probably going to be gone. And then Greenlaw's kind of up in the air. We'll see.
I think they'll figure it out with Greenlaw.
Okay, so Greenlaw, you kind of figure it out there. And it's not like, linebacker would have been a secondary or ancillary need anyways because you have Fred Warner. So it's like, okay, well, you got Fred, and then you can kind of figure it out behind him. So even if they were to lose him, it doesn't mean a ton for, I think, this exercise that we're going to do here today. But then let's talk about Brock Purdy really quick. Very split, depending on who you ask, of what the 49ers will do or what the 49ers should do. Now, this offseason, he's not a free agent, but we were chatting before we hit record, and you reminded me that, like, this is the first time that now he can sign that extension.
Yes.
And it sounded like you were pretty confident that does happen for this team. So talk to me about that.
I believe for sure. I mean, it is split. Let me tell you where it's not split. Kyle Shanahan.
In the building? Okay.
And Kyle Shanahan is 100% in on Brock Purdy, which I think says a lot because, in my opinion, they're tied to each other in terms of success. Like, Kyle Shanahan's future success is going to depend on the future success of Brock Purdy, and he is all in on Brock Purdy. Was this last season the seasons he had before? No, but I think that's true of everybody. Do I think he's going to reset the market? Probably not, but I have a 1A and 1B to that. 1A being last year at the owners' meetings, and of course a lot has happened since then, but Jed York said to us at the time with a scrum with him, he is going to get what the market will bear. So there's something to be said for that. I know that things were different this season, but there's something to be said for that. Locker cleanout day, Brock Purdy, he was asked, would he not show up to OTAs? And he doesn't want drama. He's literally said those words. I am not a drama guy. I don't want drama, but if something's not done, I don't know. But let's hope. He said, my feeling is it'll be done. So I think they're going to sign him to a long-term extension. I don't think it's going to be $60 million a year, but I think it'll be somewhere between 50 and 55. But they're going to get it done. I mean, this is their guy. This is who they believe in. He is their franchise quarterback. I've never seen Kyle Shanahan trust a quarterback like he trusts Brock Purdy, in terms, at least when he was at the 49ers. So, and that's what I can speak the best to. So they're going to get this done. They believe in him, and that's their guy.
Okay, so the Brock Purdy deal, we feel like it's going to get done. So now,
check that off.
So you can check that off the list. So now, okay, going back to the free agents, you're bringing Aaron Banks back. He was a starter this past season. You're probably bringing Talanoa Hufanga back. You said, all right, they probably figure out a way for Drake Greenlaw to be back. Obviously, he's had a lot of success in this system, so it does make sense. Ward's probably gone. So what does that set up for them when it comes to those off-season needs, when we get to free agency, and then we'll do a mock draft here in a second? What do you think are the biggest needs for this team going into next year?
Well, they lost the season besides injuries in the trenches. That's really where they did. The defensive line was not what it was. They lost Eric Armstead, and it felt like on the aggregate they got better, but in practice they did not. They had trouble on the offensive line. So those are the positions that are going to be most important to them. They are going to need to add a corner if Charvarius Ward does not come back. Now, they really like Renardo Green coming off a really good
I liked him too. Yeah.
Season. Obviously, they love Diamador Lenore, but they're going to have to bring someone else in at corner. But I think those trenches, that's what they need. Yeah. Defensive lineman, offensive lineman. If you're a lineman on either side of the field, this team is looking at you for sure.
Okay. All right. So let's fire it up. Let's do a little 3-round mock here. We've got Tracy with us. And so what we're going to do is we're going to run a 3-round mock draft in the PFF mock draft simulator. And we're going to, that's fine. Hey, you got to get into it. Put the GM glasses on. Instead of the GM cap, it's the GM glasses.
Exactly.
So we're seeing a little bit here. Okay, Cam Ward, Travis Hunter, McMillan, Carter, Graham, your boy from Michigan. Will Johnson also going in the top 8.
They're not going to trade up to get a corner. That's just not what they do. But Will Johnson, I think, is one of the best players in the draft.
Will Johnson's, I mean, we love Will Johnson. He's incredibly talented. You know, he's somebody who, okay, a little bit of a down year this past year, but I mean, he is still unbelievably talented.
He was healthy,
yeah,
he was unbelievable.
He was one of the guys who was the only players in the country who could match up with Marvin Harrison Jr. when they played at Ohio State. So I think there's something to that. So the 11th pick is up here. You talk about offensive linemen. So we're in a situation where I think this is realistic for the 49ers, as crazy it is to believe. No offensive linemen have been picked in the first 10 picks. And do I think maybe it's more likely than not we get one off the board in the top 10? Yes. Okay. But it's not known as like the O-linemen are going to fly off the board. So we've got, you talked about offensive tackle being potentially like an area where they really need to hit. All of these guys are here. Armand Membou from Missouri, Will Campbell, Josh Simmons, Kelvin Banks Jr., Josh Connerly is here. All of these players are there, or some more interior guys. We talked about how the 49ers have 4 picks within the top 100. Yes. So they might not have to pick an interior player if they really want to go to an interior player. But what do you think about offensive tackle? Is offensive tackle specifically, and they got Trent Williams, the all-world left tackle there, but
Trent Williams is getting towards the end of his career. They have to start planning for life after Trent Williams. Okay. They absolutely do.
Okay.
And the thing is that's interesting about the 49ers is historically, this is where they go defensive linemen. This is what they do. But I think they're going to have to pick an offensive tackle in this first round.
Okay.
But if they don't, it will be a defensive tackle.
So do you think, when you say defensive linemen, do you think they more need, because they struggled against the run. And so I go, okay, does that mean that they're going to really prioritize an interior off defensive lineman, or do they need a running mate for Nick Bosa?
They need a running mate for Nick Bosa. They just haven't since D Ford. Since D Ford was on the team, they really haven't had anybody opposite Nick Bosa, and they desperately need that.
Okay.
So then it makes me feel like maybe they go defensive end.
Okay, so then with that expertise and that help there, pick number 11. Okay. I love Mike Green from Marshall. Okay. He is an absolute monster. Now he's a little bit undersized at 6'2". He's at 250 pounds, which is totally fine for an edge rusher. He showed up at the Senior Bowl and he looked great, but these numbers have been unbelievable over the last 2 years. He's been an elite pass rusher over the last 2 years. He was so fantastic in the first 2 days of Senior Bowl practices. He was like, all right, I'm done. I'm not risking injury anymore. I don't even need to play the third day. So yeah, right. So you talking about them needing an edge rusher. I think I'm going to go with Mike Green here for them and then see what we have for the offensive line as the draft kind of continues here. So we'll go Green for the 49ers there, and that brings us up to the early parts of the second round. So they got to pick in the second round here at number 43, and then we'll have 2 third-round picks, 75, and then they got a comp pick here that we were projecting them to have at number 99. So, all right, let's go back to offensive line. Okay. Let's talk about offensive line and see if there's an offensive lineman that's still here. So I think this is falling pretty well for them. Mm-hmm. Donovan Jackson from Ohio State is an offensive guard at heart, but because of injury, he was forced to play outside at the offensive tackle positions. And I know picking Ohio State, guys, probably going to hurt your heart here. It is, but he is a really talented player who can play both offensive tackle or offensive guard for you. He's probably more of a guard, so I'd consider him there. These 2 guys are also very interesting, Ariante Ursary and Cam Williams, because they are massive human beings. I mean, Ariante Ursary is 6'6", 330 pounds, which makes you feel like, okay, here's a Trent Williams type of a player. Cam Williams, again, 6'5", 335. To me, if one of these 2 guys are on the board, which I feel like they will be, that is your draft and then maybe develop. Maybe you're playing them on the right side of things while Trent Williams is there. And then when Trent Williams sort of comes into that retirement time of his career, you probably got that guy that you love there. How do you feel about that situation?
I feel pretty good about it. I think that is what they're going to have to do. And I think it's going to hurt their hearts because like going wide receiver, but they're going to have to, they're going to have to go.
We got some more picks. We might be able to get wide receiver in there.
Wide receiver, but last year was the wide receiver class. So this year they really need to focus on these areas.
Okay, well, I've got Ariante Aristry ranked a little bit higher than Cam Williams. And so let's go with Ariante Aristry here at number 43. And then 75 and 99, I feel like we've hit two of the big needs. We hit edge rusher. We hit offensive tackle. We absolutely loved it. So corner. Corner is the area that we have not hit yet. Let's see. Man, so if they're able to get themselves Azarie Thomas at Florida State, he was a guy that was there with Renardo Green, with Jerry and Jones when they were coming out last year. He is that same type of player. Now, he is that same type of guy like Renardo Green is, where he plays a lot of press man. He plays now, Robert Saleh coming back as a defensive coordinator. He's more of that kind of cover 3 type of defensive coordinator, but that's not to say that Azarie Thomas can't play that. If you feel like corner is sort of at the point where if you're losing Ward, you really got to draft somebody within those first 3 picks, he's probably the guy that I would go with here. What do you think?
I do agree with that. My only counterpoint, and I would like to know your feeling on this, is they have in the past at times drafted corners to play in a scheme that they really weren't meant for, and it has hurt them.
Sure.
So I'm curious to know your thoughts on that. Is this, and that could just be player specific,
right?
It could be a coaching thing. You do, like you said, you have Robert Saleh back, which makes a really big difference. So I think if he's the best player on the board, and this would be if I were GM, which I'm not, is probably best for everybody. But
GM glasses on.
That's right. The GM glasses on is you draft the best player on the board, and so if and you have a position of need situation. So if your best player on the board is a position of need, then I think you go with it. Does that make? I think I said
no,
that weirdly, but you
no, it 100% makes sense, and it kind of opens things up because again, we got pick 99, and there were a couple of corners who I feel like could be more cover 3 corners that we might be able to get at 99 here with that comp pick. So instead, I go back to you. We've picked edge rusher, we've picked offensive tackle. What's kind of the next position that comes to your mind? Maybe it's defensive tackle for you. Maybe you want to go back to the well of offensive line, and we can maybe draft another offensive line. You talked about wide receiver. We can check that out. What's next? What do you think?
You know, the free agency is going to change this so much.
Of course.
But I think you go defensive tackle.
Okay. All right. So let's check it out. Let's go defensive tackle here. See who's left on the board. Okay. This player could be perfect for them in Jordan Phillips. Now people might be looking at this, 49ers fans might be watching this saying, hold on, average draft position 137. We're at pick 75. Jordan Phillips is a monster of a defensive tackle. So is Jordan Farmer from Florida State. I think he's, just generally drafted a little bit higher than these two guys. I would probably go with one of Jordan Phillips or Josh Farmer.
Okay.
Jordan Phillips was such a monster against the run this season for Maryland, and he was great at that when he was at the Shrine Bowl as well. Yeah, I think a lot of people like Josh Farmer, but I think this is the guy that they really need to anchor their defensive line. So I'm going to take Jordan Phillips. Yep, I'm going to take Jordan Phillips here. There you go. And then the last guy, pick number 99. Let's go back to the cornerback spot.
Now I think we're drafted.
And now I love the idea of taking Noel Williams from California. I got to watch him in person when he was at the Shrine Bowl, and I thought he was great in those press situations, but also in those cover 3 situations where he's able to play a little bit more off coverage. He's able to more read the quarterback's eyes. He's got good athleticism, good size to him. So Noel Williams would be my pick here to round out corner. How do you feel about it? Okay.
And my dad will be happy he went to Berkeley.
Okay, there we go. There we go. We're making dad happy. We absolutely love it. Now, we took a couple of risks on, or we were drafting guys above where they were ranked on my board, so I don't know how good the grade's going to be. So what you really want to do is focus on these first 2. Yeah. And then I think the draft, these 2 picks of Jordan Phillips and Noel Williams is more of like, all right, these are scheme picks. We're getting the right guys in the building, which I think is really important. Something we're going to talk about a lot throughout the offseason at PFF is making those team-specific big boards. But, hey, we got a B. I'm all right with that.
I'm okay with that. I mean, there are people that would say, and probably in the 4th round, so not at 99, they maybe are the 4th pick. They should need quarterback behind Brock Purdy. They need that. But
sure.
I think we did a good job here. I'd be so curious to know if we had done this last year with Renardo Green, where they would have fallen.
Right.
Because I'm just so curious because they really saw something in him, and he was really good for them. But I'm good with the B. Because if they actually are a B, I would say every team, if your full draft is a B,
you're great.
You're great. A really
you're going to be a GM in the league for a long time. So are you with the GM glasses.
Absolutely.
Tracy Sandler from Fangirl Sports Network, doing everything covered in the 49ers. So make sure you follow all of her great work on Twitter, which is now X, which I can't come to remember, but Instagram, and basically everything. Tracy, thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. It was great.
Thanks for watching, everybody. Make sure you like and subscribe the video. And if you don't have a PFF Plus subscription, you can get one to see all the premium stats that we talked about here on the show, plus the expert betting and fantasy advice over at subscribe.pff.com. The description is also right below. So if you are not a PFF Plus subscriber, you can come one today.